This is Carl Stafford, Extension Agent in Culpeper, Virginia, and livestock forages are my appreciation in agriculture and the soils. I'm for soil because what it does for that system that I'm so appreciative of, pastures, and you get on into no-till crops as well. That soil matters everything to the production of that system and soil life and what the benefits of storing carbon, organic matter, productivity, moisture retention. So I am for soil because it does a lot for agriculture.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Hische, and my co-host, Eric Benfelt and Mary Sketch Bryant will be joining me in just a few moments. But the first order of business today is to thank you for your very positive feedback on our conversation with Becky Szarzynski. Becky is a young farmer. She lives and farms with her family in Fairfield, Virginia. That's in Rockbridge County, at the very end of the southern Shenandoah Valley, just north of Roanoke, if you will. And she has a major presence on social media, both on Facebook, and she has her own YouTube channel. Just do a search for Mountain Glen Farm. Becky is a wealth of knowledge, especially when it comes to grazing practices, forages, soil health. She's got a lot of things to say, and she's got a lot of followers. Becky Szarzynski, she was our special guest in part one of this episode. Now we hear from part two as Eric Benfelt continues the conversation.
Sure, Becky, and this is coming from a previous conversation you had that, we think about the soil as an ecosystem. And I know just from your YouTube channel, as well as previous conversations, you talk about bird songs and different species of birds that you've seen on your farm. And I enjoy walking and recently seeing a merlin and hear some owls on close to our farm lane. So, just talking about the evolution that you've seen as far as the ecosystem of your farm.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and it doesn't happen all at once. And there's not maybe a particular moment that you can be like, oh, I've made a positive change and things are going well. But over the course of time, and I think for me now being in farming my whole life, but really intensively the last 15 years, doing these better management practices on the farm. And what I've seen change is the plant communities, more dung beetles in the manure pats, which I actually love to talk about. And then the different types of birds and not only different types of birds, but I know lately I've been watching this hawk that stays in this one field, and every day I walk down to feed the pigs, and that hawk is in one of the trees in the fields. And I had my yearling heifers in that field for the last month. And so I noticed that the hawks like to follow the herd around because they actually nibble the grass down shorter, which kind of exposes the mice and the voles and the rabbits a little more, so that when those little critters are moving from place to place in the field, that hawk can actually see them. And I've seen the hawks get a rabbit. I've seen the hawks get songbirds, actually. So it's really exciting to see that. But I've also been seeing meadowlarks. Last year, I heard for the very first time in 25 years, since I was a kid, a bobwhite quail. I only heard him for the one day, but he was there. And that was really exciting to me because, again, I haven't heard him for 25, 30 years. And so to me, that is diversity coming back in. And that really is very encouraging. That's what I want to see. That's why I farm the way I do.
And Becky, I know you're always learning from the recent science and the leading experts in soil health. Be interested if there's anything in the last couple of years that you've changed on the farm or added in as far as techniques or approaches that you're excited about, or maybe that didn't work or that did work really well.
Well, to start with, one of the challenges that I find, I really wanted to be able to utilize annual forages. And I was really excited about that because I had done a lot of research and a lot of other farmers have had great success with it. And so I attempted them for a couple of years and had great failure in them. And I just chalk it up to my inexperience with summer annuals, though I know so many farmers have had great soil building benefits from that, and really great forages for their animals as well. And so there's that. Right now I'm developing some ideas and trying to do compost as well to help build the soil microbiology in my fields, especially the fungal biology that I want to increase. A couple years back, I took a soil health class online from Dr. Elaine Ingham, learned a lot of great information about my first microscope, and have been playing with that and seeing what's in my soils, which is extremely exciting to see the little critters that live in it. It really does hit home and makes it that much more real. I've definitely intensified my grazing practices, and I've also come to understand that sometimes when I mess up, let's say I leave my herd in a pasture and I make a muddy mess out of it. And at the time it looks awful and I feel awful about it. But sometimes the next year comes around and there's more diversity in that one spot than there is in the rest of the field. So sometimes our mistakes that we think are mistakes at the time really can open us up to new ideas and possibilities as well. So again, just staying flexible and adaptive, and knowing that if you mess up, just give it a year. It might not be so bad.
We're talking today with Becky Szarzynski of Fairfield, Virginia, in Rockbridge County in the southern Shenandoah Valley. Becky, I can hear the passion in your voice. You're obviously all in when it comes to soil health, when it comes to pasture management and farming in a biodiverse way. Who inspired you? You mentioned your dad earlier on, but other than your immediate family, can you talk a little bit about what those early resources were? Who lit the fire?
Well, I will give credit to my parents for sure. Again, they both were foresters in the U.S. Forest Service, and so they were always into natural resource management. And so from a very early age, growing up on a farm, I knew that this was a lifestyle that I always wanted to pursue. But as I kind of took that pivoting moment when I dropped out of college to pursue agriculture full time, to my parents' great demise, because they wanted me to get my college degree, but I didn't. There was a few folks that I started watching on YouTube or reading their books. Greg Judy was a big one that really ignited it. Saw him at one of the grazing schools here in Virginia, and my dad and I both went to that workshop. And I remember on the ride home, it was about an hour ride home, we were talking nonstop about what we had just heard. There was some controversy in that workshop because that was about 15 years ago. So some other people didn't quite agree with some of the things he said. But he was talking about these concepts of grazing management and increasing your forage efficiency by putting your cows into a smaller group and rotating them on a daily basis. And at that point in my life, I really didn't understand what that was. And so from there, that kind of spurred me to research other people. Gabe Brown, Alan Savory, Alan Williams. There's a lot of great folks out there that I get inspiration from because they put science to it, along with actually doing it themselves in their own operations.
And Mary, one thing that I've also, or not Mary, Becky, the importance of stories. And, as you talk about Mountain Glen Farm and trying, marketing the products that you raise, the cattle and the pigs, what do you like to highlight, particularly in relation to soil health?
Well, we all know this, but it all comes back to the soil. There's a connection between soil, plants, animals, and human beings, and we're all connected. We are not separate from each other, and every single person on this planet, every animal, every plant, I think, contributes to soil health in one way or another, whether you see it directly or not. For me, I'm in a really blessed position that I get to directly see what impact I'm having on my soil. But people who live in, the cities, they still have a huge impact on soils as well. And I take a great responsibility in being a good steward of my soils. It can be something that's controversial, but it can also bring us together. And I hope that we pursue that for sure. And coming back to your comment on storytelling, the reason why I wish I could tell more stories, and maybe I should share more of my stories. Sometimes I wonder if people want to listen to them or not. But the reason why I farm the way I do, again, is I was saying earlier, it comes back to feeling, but really it's, as I've gotten older, it's about the beauty of farming. And when I say the beauty of farming, I don't necessarily mean like, ooh, pretty flower, pretty sunset, even though that definitely is one aspect that I truly enjoy, but it's also about the beauty of the challenges and the heartbreaks and the blood, sweat, and tears that comes from farming. It's a very raw lifestyle and experience. And again, the older I get, the more I find beauty in everything, even the daily grind of, moving that fence every day, during July. It gets really boring sometimes, but at the same time, you find the things in it that makes you just want to keep going. Seeing those barn swallows or tree swallows come every time I move the cows, I can almost clock it, give them about 30 to 45 seconds. If they're not there when I move the cows, they will be there in about 30 to 40 seconds. And it's super exciting to see that and just watch the impact that animals have on our environment, and knowing that I'm a part of that is just really amazing. And I think more and more of these younger folks are starting to see that as well and wanting to be part of that in their lives.
I'm curious, do you test your soil? And if so, how often and what methods do you use?
Yeah, so we do soil tests every few years. We purchased the farm that I'm at currently here 6 years ago. And so I did some heavy soil testing. I sent my soil test into Virginia Tech. They have a free soil test, but you also can do organic matter as well. So we do tests like that. So that's more on the chemical side. And that's really helpful. Like I was saying earlier, I bought a microscope, and so I can actually see what biological activity is going on in my soils as well. So I definitely use that as a tool to see kind of where I'm at. Some of these biological changes might not happen overnight, and a lot of these changes don't happen overnight. We just have to be patient, but they do happen in time. And so I like to use as many tools as I can. I don't like to say one tool is good or bad. Certain times, certain tools work, and it's all about time management and management of these tools as well. Maybe you use them just once or twice. Maybe you don't use them again for a few years, but just staying adaptive and flexible on what we use. And so soil testing is really important and just gives you a good baseline of kind of where you're at. So then every few years you can come back and see, has it changed? Is what you're doing making an effect on your land?
And Becky, you've talked about some of resources that you really used over the years getting started to learn about soil health, Craig Judy and whatnot, but would love to hear recently what are some resources and people that you've really been learning from.
So I love to listen to podcasts. I do some driving around from time to time and just love to listen to podcasts. So obviously your guys' podcast is great. Enjoy all the folks that you bring on. Another one that I really have been enjoying lately is called the Herd Quitter podcast. And it's kind of, I'm not going to say off the wall thinking about farming, but it's definitely outside the box thinking about farming. And that's what I always find is super exciting, is these ideas, these innovations that are different. The Regenerative Ag podcast is another really great one. South Pole has a podcast too, if people want to look that up. But also, I go down a lot of rabbit holes on YouTube, and I think everyone does that too. There's so many videos and knowledge, some better than others. But and then I just always try to, the Acres magazine's a great resource I go to. There's so many books and resources out there right now. It's kind of just depends on what your forte is on what you want to learn right then and now. But I really am a big watcher of YouTube. But then, going out on your land, I learn a lot from that as well. So just watching your animals and watching your landscape, that's a huge learning resource there also.
Unfortunately, our time is up in this segment, and I want to thank you for coming back for a part two of our conversation. Becky Szarzynski of Fairfield, Virginia and Rockbridge County. And Becky, remind us again of your social media channels, your YouTube channel.
Yeah, so you can watch some of my YouTube videos on Mountain Glen Farm. You can also find me on Facebook, Mountain Glen Farm. And you can also email me if you got any questions or comments at mountainglenfarm@gmail.com.
And what is the web address for the Forage and Grasslands Council?
Yeah, the Virginia Forage on Grassland Council has some great resources. They have a mentor program as well. And if you want to come to any of their pasture walks or winter forage conferences, a great time to network with other farmers. Their website is vaforages.org.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Mary, Eric, Becky, thank you so much, and take care.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Becky.
And we do have time on this episode for another of the key principles of soil health from Dr. Rory McGuire at Virginia Tech.
Keeping the soil covered is very important in terms of preventing soil erosion. Soil erosion is one of the biggest ways to decrease soil quality. If you lose the soil, you're losing the valuable part of your land. So keeping the soil covered prevents soil erosion. And when raindrops directly impact the soil, they can form a crust on the soil surface. They actually break the soil structure right at the soil surface. And once the soil structure is broken at the surface, you don't get any infiltration of water anymore. And of course, if water doesn't infiltrate, it runs off. And when it runs off, it takes the soil with it. So keeping the soil covered is extremely important in terms of preventing surface crust formation and soil erosion.
Dr. Rory McGuire at Virginia Tech. For the Soil, a conversation is made possible with funding support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Agua Fund. Other partners include the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia State University, Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and partners of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Views expressed on this podcast are those of each individual guest. To download a copy of this or any other episode, visit the website forthesoil.org. And if you should have a specific question about soil health, just call your local extension office or contact your local USDA service center or a Soil and Water Conservation District office. Music used during today's program was provided courtesy of Mr. Ruiz and the Flip Charts, all rights reserved. For the Soil, a conversation is produced by On the Farm Radio in collaboration with Virginia Tech. I'm your host, Jeff Ishii.